So my name is Stan Bro. I think I've met everybody at this point, but I'm the Executive Director for Medical Education for Brookwood Baptist Health. And so in addition to working with Kathy on undergraduate medical education here, I run the Graduate Medical Education Office and work with program directors and program coordinators to just accomplish their day-to-day work. So we started this session a few years ago with our new VCOM students, and thought it was pretty beneficial. And every year we see people struggle with the match. Not as a rule, not everybody, right? But some people are going to have an easy time with the match, and some people are going to have a harder time with the match. And so we thought we'd just start to offer at least more information than what we thought students were getting, just to help begin to guide you in your match process, and to give you a little perspective from the residency side of things too, which I think is valuable. I'm going to start with a general presentation on ERAS, the application process, the interview process, and the main residency match. I'm going to skim over a lot of stuff because there's a ton of detail. But all of my slides will email to you later, and they've all got active links in them. And so there's a lot of resources in here that I've found and just sort of made a little easier for you to get to. A lot of them will require your AAMC login to get to. And some of them, like we as residency programs, don't actually have access to, but you and medical school advisors have access to. And so someone I'll say, you ought to go look at this stuff, but I can't actually show it to you because I don't have access myself. So we'll do that for about 30 minutes, and then we're going to have a panel discussion with some of our program directors and coordinators. And I'll get that discussion started with some canned questions that I've got for them. They know what those questions are already, just so you know. And then we'll open it up to whatever questions you guys have. And I'll tell you too, if anything's confusing along the way, just raise your hand. We'll knock it out. We'll be kind of informal. So just to start, a bunch of resources for you. These are all active links in the PDF that Kathy will send you. But a lot of resources from the Association of American Medical Colleges, right, which is the company that oversees at least allopathic medical school accreditation, and then also the company that owns the ERAS application system. And so the AAMC is your friend and your real source for a lot of information related to the match. And you'll find a lot of stuff in here. As well, there are a bunch of links from the NRMP, the National Residency Matching Program. And those, it seems like those ought to be one system, right? But there's the application system, and then there's the match system. And they're two completely separate companies and two completely separate registrations, two completely separate fees for you. And you need to understand how they both work. You need to know how to apply an interview, and also how to match. And so knowing how the rules work with both of them will be key for you. So there are obviously 3 steps to get, there's a lot more than 3 steps to getting a residency position, but 3 simple steps at this point for you to get a residency position. There's your application, there's the interview, and then there's the match, right? The application happens through the electronic residency application system, or ERAS, which everybody should already be signed up for if you're a 4th-year student. There are interviews with individual residency programs, and then there's the main residency match with the National Residency Matching Program, okay? And there, depending on what specialty you are exactly, there might be a San Francisco match process for you, but that may or may not, and I'm not an expert at all in that, so I haven't actually included information on it. All right, so your application comes first. We already said the AAMC runs the ERAS application system. There are key components of your application, and I hope you are far along in this process already, but you should by now have already written your personal statement, at least a good draft for a faculty member to review. You should have already asked for letters of recommendation, right? I'll show you in a minute, you've got 1 month left before all of this goes live, right? Your letters of recommendation, if you haven't asked for them yet, faculty, you're gonna have a hard time getting a faculty person to turn one around in less than a month, right? Your CV, and your CV is more of an electronic process with ERAS, but you'll want a good detailed CV that shares a lot of information about yourself. Your medical school evaluation is more of a canned evaluation that the dean's office usually produces. And, that's going to be a significant element for you. I honestly don't know if you're privy to seeing those or not privy to seeing those, but all of those will be produced probably right about the last minute before applications are released. Your medical school transcript. Some of you have a transcript to be super proud of. Some of you have a transcript that barely scraped by. Let's be honest, right? I'd hate for you to see my college transcript, but your medical school transcript plays a large role in the positions you're eligible for. Your USMLE and your COMLEX transcript, okay, not just your scores that you'll type into the system, but the actual transcript that backs up those scores, shows whether or not you failed a step or didn't fail a step, and that kind of detail. Your picture, as dumb as it sounds, your picture kind of says a lot about you and sort of your level of normalcy as a human being, or as a person who wants to be a doctor, so it's not a glamour shot. It's just a good looking professional image. And, it's also not a super casual shot. And across the country, programs and institutions make decisions of things like, am I going to allow the residency programs to see pictures or not? Okay. Am I going to allow residency programs to know the race of a candidate or the sex of a candidate? Different identifying characteristics like that. Anything that sort of might put them in a protected class according to federal law. And so some institutions say nobody should be seeing this. Everything should be completely blinded. And others say, we're just going to leave it open and let the applications sort of speak for themselves. So and I won't even tell you what we do because we're sometimes a mix of all of that. Again, the AAMC online, when you log in with your student ID in particular, it's got a lot of resources available to you. There's understanding the application process. There's researching residency programs. That could be anything from, I don't know if I want to do orthopedic surgery or general surgery, to, okay, I know I want to be a general surgeon. What programs are out there, and how do those programs compare? Okay, all programs have provided information to the AAMC about their programs. And the AAMC has also sucked in a lot of data that doesn't seem to be super accurate, I would say, about programs. So for instance, the AAMC knows which residents are in our programs. They just don't seem to have the right mix of male, female, by race, and different other statistics. So some of that is brand new data, and we're still trying to figure it out. They've got guides for how to interview. They've got guides about the match process and so on. So, I mean, honestly, if I were you, I would learn the game by studying as much of this information as possible, in addition to your day job that you've got to do. There's, again, just other examples of information that's available out there. And so we'll look at the calendar real quick. Everybody's registered for ERAS, right? Everybody's started the process pretty well. If you haven't, that's panic time, and you should come see me on Monday, but or if anybody hasn't, then that's panic time. So you could have started an ERAS as of June 5th. September 4th, if you're working on your applications now, September 4th is the first time then that you can hit, submit, I want to apply to Brookwood Baptist Health, or I want to apply to, University of Alabama, Birmingham, internal medicine or whatever. You can do that as early as September 4th, but there's no need to do it on September 4th, okay? On September 25th, though, every program in the country gets a download of every application there is for that program. Okay, and so on September 25th, for instance, our internal medicine program will get somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500 applications on that one morning. Okay, and the internal medicine faculty and coordinator will begin working through those applications very quickly that morning. Okay, and so if your application number 2001 that comes in on September the 26th, it's going to get lost in the shuffle. Okay, maybe we'll go find it. We may purposely go dig for it. But you think about all the different programs out there and whether they're capable of figuring out, oh, there's one that came in late that I haven't seen. The system just doesn't work that way for us. It doesn't like star things that you haven't looked at yet, so you can go back and look at them. It just, really you have to actively look and actively decide have I seen this or not. So do yourself a favor, get your stuff in on time. And then May 31st, everything ends, but that just means the system kind of closes. The AMC would, give you a lot of guidance, some of the basic guidance. Do your homework regarding how competitive you are. Some of you are smart enough to be neurosurgeons. Some of you are not, right? Some of you are well suited to be internists, but want to be general surgeons. And so you've got to decide kind of what you're most skilled at, what you can sell yourself best at, and what you're going to enjoy as a career too. And you need to come up with some options. So if you're interested in a competitive specialty, you need to apply broadly in that specialty. Okay, so if you're interested in orthopedic surgery and you're a Birmingham kid, yeah, I'm going to apply to UAB and that's where I'm going. It won't work. You won't get it, But if you apply to UAB and 20 other orthopedic surgery programs, you've got a reasonable chance, as long as you're still competitive in terms of scores and grades and everything else. So the next step is to have a backup plan. Okay. Every year, Dr. Fry will tell you he gets applications after the match from all of these people who thought they were going to be orthopedic surgeons. Okay. And then the Monday of match week rolled around and they realized all of a sudden that they're not going to be an orthopedic surgeon anymore. Right. And so that is a life crisis for that person that, affects everything. Right. I always say, their mamas have been telling everybody at Sunday school that my boy's going to be an orthopedic surgeon for like the last 10 years, right? And suddenly on Monday, March the 13th, he's not, and so, but he could have fixed that if he had a backup plan back in September of the year before, right? And so if you want to go super competitive, which I'd encourage you to do if you're eligible, at least come up with a backup plan that you could live with. And I'll tell you too, every year we see people who say, I've got to be an orthopedic surgeon or pick your specialty. And I just can't live with doing anything else. That's the only thing I'm going to do. And so it doesn't happen. And then they want to take a year off. And a year later, they're less desirable as a future orthopedic surgery resident than they were the year before. They're that much further removed from med school. They already look like they've had trouble, right, to any orthopedic surgery residency program director. And so find your plan, make it a good plan now so that you succeed in the match the first time through. That's my lesson. Don't get too creative with your personal statement. Your letters of recommendation are very important. The programs review applications really the day they're released, and they keep going after that too, but make sure yours is in on time. The interview is a two-way street. The program's interviewing you for sure. You should also be interviewing the programs. You should be prepared to lead part of the discussion in interviews without seeming like you're trying to assume too much. Their programs include a lot of different people in the selection process. The program director for sure, faculty for sure, residents for sure, the program coordinator for sure. Probably not anybody beyond that, but all of those people will have input into where you are on the rank order list. And the more programs you rank, the more programs you get to interview with, which leads to the more programs you can rank, the better your chances are. But there's a limit to that, and we'll talk about that limit. If I haven't said it yet, the AMC offers you a lot of information. You might be interested in just some basic background. So if you don't know how many internal medicine programs there are in the state of Alabama and you need to find out because you want to apply to all of them, then you can, again, go to AAMC. You can click on this link, and it'll take you to a list like this. This link actually goes to all residency programs. And then you've got to find the group that is applying in September, okay, which is your group. And then you can list, you can see Alabama comes right to the top of the list, which is great. And I always love that Alabama is the first state and Brookwood Baptist Health is the first. Yeah, I mean, every list of residency programs you see, we're almost always like at the very top. Even if you look at like a whole national list of things, it's cool. We better never change. We got to be with a B or something. So we'll be Baptist Health next. That'll be good. But in case you didn't know, there's now, I think, 11 internal medicine programs in Alabama. Just a few short years ago, there were 5. The programs have grown greatly, particularly at a lot of community hospitals because of the growth of the DO schools in the state and their influence to try to grow more residency programs. One thing we're very proud of here is we've been an accredited residency program for, like 60 years now. Yeah, about 60 years now. And so, it's something to consider. Are you going to be the first resident at a brand new program, or are you going to be, a resident who's following in a long line of others? And I'd go for the latter probably. But those differences do offer a lot of opportunities. There are some programs, there'll be programs that, get accredited next March after the match. And so that could be an opportunity for people that are in crisis mode at that point. The AMC has other opportunities, like if you're curious about the differences between specialties, you've probably got a lot of insight into that already, but if you want to find out more, you can see that there. And they have a lot of information on student success in matching, okay? And they break a lot of that down by DOs versus MDs, okay? Because they want you to have something as close to you as possible. Some of this data is old, but they've got a lot newer data as well. But some of it's behind that sort of student and advisor firewall that I can't get to anymore. So if you look, if you want to be, and I'll compare family medicine, internal medicine, orthopedic surgery real quick. In family medicine, if you're a DO 2013 to 2018, and these percentages have probably improved a little bit since then, but only a couple of percentage points or so. If you had a US MLE, okay, in that case, and complex would have been okay too, but if you have US MLE, greater than 218, you had a 54% chance of matching as a family medicine person. Now, they may have been pursuing other options as well, which may have driven this down a little bit because, frankly, I think a 218 would be pretty good at matching in family medicine. But if you scored less than a 202 on the USMLE, you only had a 49% chance. But still, you did have a 49% chance, kind of multiple ways to look at it. And if you failed USMLE on your first attempt, your percentage success fell to 40% in that case. Okay, so know that your scores are going to have an impact. The pass fail is going to be a hard thing for people to figure out in some ways, but step one, I guess, is still fair game. For internal medicine, the numbers get a little higher. If you had your USMLE greater than a 228, you had a 62% chance of matching in internal medicine. Less than a 210, just a 43% chance of matching. Okay, and if you failed, you had a 39% chance. Okay, failed and then passed, we would assume. And then orthopedic surgery, I'm going to start with the failure, right? If you failed step one on the first attempt, nobody even tried from 2013 to 2018. I don't know if the advisors just said, oh, it's not even worth it or what, but nobody tried and nobody got it. Less than a 228, 81 tried. That's the far left side, right? And nobody got it, okay? But a 229, started to have a 35%, really a 229 and above, it looks like 35% success rate for DOs. And I would tell you, I think these numbers are improving over time. This is, again, some more detailed information for you from the NRMP in this case. It will give you a lot of specifics about, average scores, how many men, how many women, all kinds of different information. And there's a DO report that's complex based and an MD report that's USMLE based. It'd be worth looking at that. You'll get all these links live. This is another graph from the NRMP using much more recent data. And I just pick on orthopedic surgery just because it's sort of the classic example that we run into every year. But this is from the NRMP again. And this one will show you that, and my slide is kind of hidden from the Zoom stuff, but 750 and above, these are DOs. I believe these are DOs in this. Yeah, because these are complex scores. 750 and above has an 80+% chance of matching, okay, in orthopedic surgery. And if you've got less than a 500, apparently you can still match in orthopedic surgery this year. This is later data than those first graphs I showed you. But the percentages are going to be very, very low, right? So those may be students who are matching at the same place they trained. And so in spite of their scores, they're very well known to that program. I don't know what the difference is between those. But obviously higher scores are going to translate into higher propensity to match in these more competitive specialties. This graph will show you, it's kind of hard to interpret at times, but on the x-axis is the number of applications that people submitted. Okay, and it goes from 0 to 45, and it could go well beyond that for some people. And then over here is their probability of entering a residency program. Okay, So this orange line at the top is for people who had greater than a 228 on their USMLE. Now, 228 is not the average. 240 or so is the average. But you'll see their point here is that this line levels out whether you're smart or whether you're medium or whether you're not as strong, okay? This curve starts to level out. And so if you went from 40 applications to 100 applications, your odds are really not going to get that much better, is what they would say on this. And so their sort of point of, I don't know if you call it your inflection point or what, but their point ends up being around 29 or so applications is where you really hit the law of diminishing returns. And that, if you go to application number 34, 35, 36, it's really not going to help you necessarily get a program to get a match. So we do each year see some, there's some people out there that will do, 100 applications, and it's probably a waste after you apply to the first 30 that you're interested in. All right, AMC actually just this week launched something called the Residency Explorer tool. There's a link there for you. It shows you a lot of detailed information about individual residency programs, although I will say we printed out some of our specific reports and we're disappointed that they were only halfway accurate at best, when you got to some of the individual details. And that's a screenshot from it. They'll have you set up a profile, say that I want to, assume I want to be an orthopedic surgery resident. I'm a guy and I'm from the Southeast, I'm not sure just exactly what it'll ask you, but it'll start trying to match you to some places that it thinks you're a good match at, but it'll let you look at anything you want to look at. So, and well worth your time, I think, because there are probably a lot of programs out there that you just haven't heard of, quite frankly. And your biggest source of information is probably the student sitting next to you in a lot of ways. But there's a lot better information out there. This is just a quick snapshot of some of the information, but it goes on for pages. What's available out there. Okay, so remember that September 25th date. It is honestly, it's a drop dead date for y'all. You can still submit your application after that, of course, but I think you miss out on a huge amount of effort from program directors all over the country. All right, so that's applications. We'll talk interviews. We'll do this fairly quickly. Programs get applications on the 25th. Most will begin reviewing them that day. Programs will send interview offers at varying times, but many will send interview offers that first week, within the first week of reviewing applications. And then other programs, there are specialties in the country that have reached agreements or semi-agreements where they say, okay, we're all going to agree as a bunch of general surgery program directors, I'll pick on general surgery for a minute, that we're going to wait and everybody's going to release their interview offers on October 23rd, okay? And they do that, I guess, they think that gives the applicants the best chance of looking at everything and selecting from the interviews that they want. Frankly, applicants have a pretty long-standing tradition of canceling interviews if they decide they don't want to go on. So I'm not sure what difference it really makes. But, and so you'll see some program directors will abide by that and some will decide that it's in their better interest not to. Okay. And you'll see this for general surgery, and I'm not sure what other specialties, but a number of specialties may have a national release date. And so where I say, if people may make interview offers within the first week, expect that there may be certain specialties that for sure won't do it that quickly. I will say waiting until October 23rd means they miss a whole month of opportunity to schedule interviews and stuff. So I'm not sure why they wait so long. All right, virtual versus in-person interviews. The AAMC's official recommendation for this year is still that we stay virtual. And this frankly will remain their recommendation for the rest of your life. They have decided that virtual interviews are essentially the most equitable form of interviews. They're the cheapest for you as candidates. If somebody can't afford to travel, then they can still do a virtual one for sure. But this year, we started to see it last year. I think this year you'll really start to see it. where you're going to have a choice of virtual versus in person. And not every program is going to give you a choice, but I think you're going to see a lot of programs will. Our own program directors are mostly going to give you a choice this year. So many programs will probably offer a mix of interview types this year. If you do virtual interviews, you need to be ready for those, right? You don't want to do it on your phone, okay? You want to be set up at a nice desk with a decent, appropriate background that doesn't draw too many weird criticisms from the people conducting the interviews behind you, without your mom passing through your background as well during your interview and stuff. You want to be thinking about it, and you want to prepare for it the same way you would an in-person one. You think about what you're going to wear that day, make sure your computer's working and all that sort of stuff. You've got to decide how to put your best foot forward on the virtual interview. In person, same thing. How are you going to get to the site of the interview? What's the cost of that going to be? How many in-person interviews could you do if you needed to do a number of them? We kind of think that we'll see people traveling here for in-person interviews from, Mississippi, Georgia, Tennessee, that kind of stuff, driving. Many places will probably put you up in a hotel when you get there, but probably nobody will pay for your actual travel to the place. So just be prepared for that. The other issue that the AAMC points out is just time commitment. A virtual interview might take 3 hours from you, maybe the night before for an hour, maybe the day of for a couple of hours. An in-person interview is going to take a day and a half or 2 days, something like that. But, time on site in interview will be 4 hours or so for you. All right, so just a lot of things to think about. You'll probably have your first interview in October, okay, just knowing that things are released in September, and one of your, hopefully you'll get 10 to 15 or more interviews, and you got to squeeze all those in before January or by January. And so, because everything ends at the end of January, and I would tell you all that, if October ends and you only at that point have 1 or 2 interviews scheduled, that's a time to worry greatly and to seek help. Okay. And I think, honestly, what we see every year from residents who need to match again or from students who don't match is they just kind of walk down the hall like this. And what they ought to be doing is walking into the office of somebody who can help them, either at their medical school or here, in our, faculty offices and stuff, because I often think that there are probably some relatively easy things that people could do if they're if they get sort of derailed in this process. A couple of easy things they could probably do to just get a little bit better chance of matching when the time comes. And I think everybody thinks if I just hide out until March, it'll all be over. But if you hide out until March, it's all going to be over, in a bad way. So you got to think about it. All right, the actual match again runs through this separate company, the National Residency Matching Program. You can register for that as early as September 16th. Okay, you don't have to worry about September 16th, but there is a by God deadline of January the 31st, and you can't miss that deadline. You should register long before that, because programs will be looking for you in the NRMP system also at the same time that you're looking for them. You'll use that system to build your rank order list beginning on February the 3rd. And then on March the 5th is when everybody's rank order list has to be certified and turned in. So you'll finalize your list of every program you like from first to last. We'll finalize our list. In internal medicine, we'll pick every candidate that we want to bring on as a resident from first to 99th, something like that. The match process is what, puts us all in what they think is the best possible matching configuration to give as many people a number 1 to number 1 match or number 1 to number 2 match, that kind of a thing. And they try to program that more sort of in your favor, but it's only subtly in your favor. But it's a complex process. On the Monday of match week, which this year will be March the 17th, you'll find out if you matched or did not match, but you won't know where. Okay, if you're doing a couples match, you'll know the city, but you won't know the location, the exact spot, but you might divine it from that. But March the 17th, did I match or did I not match? If you did not match, or if our program did not fill on the program side, then we both enter what's called the Supplemental Offer and Acceptance Program, the SOAP program, which is sort of a mini match that runs over the next 3 days, where you again apply to programs. Okay, you don't have to totally redo your application, but you might consider that because it wasn't successful the first time. You reapply, programs relook at applications, interview a group of new people, and through a sort of a match process that happens that Thursday, hopefully programs fill and candidates get matched somewhere. So and that process usually, a lot of people have a lot of success in that process, I think, but it's not 100%. And then match day, big celebration on Friday, March 31st, or 21st, and we'll have a celebration here for you guys if you don't go down to Auburn. Right, there are different types of programs you can apply for. There's categorical, which is a full program. So for internal medicine, that'd be the full 3 years. For surgery, the full 5 years. And that takes you through to being board eligible at that point, okay? There are advanced programs. An example of that would be radiology, where in radiology, you match into a program that starts at the PGY 2 year. Dermatology is another example. You match in a program that starts at the PGY 2 year. Those programs both expect that you do a general year internship for your PGY 1 year, and that's called a preliminary program. Okay, so if you want to be a dermatologist, your path to that is to match twice this year. Okay, 1 year into a preliminary program that might be preliminary medicine, like we have here, preliminary surgery, it could be like we have here, or a transitional year program like we have here. Those are all just 1 year general programs before you go on to something more advanced. So dermatology would apply to preliminary programs this year and apply to dermatology programs this year. And the dermatology program just waits for you for an extra year after your match happens, right? But going in that I'm going to Brookwood Baptist Health for my transitional year first, and then I'm going to UAB for dermatology right after that. And that would hold true for dermatology, for most radiology programs, and for some others. And I've got a list somewhere in here that we'll get to in a minute. There's some primary care specific programs that some of you may be interested in. And then there are reserved programs, but that's really more for somebody who's already a first year resident who needs a second year position this coming year. So not something you guys would be interested in. Okay, these are the specialties that require a preliminary year. This list is changing a little bit over time, but dermatology for sure, some anesthesiology, some neurology, almost all physical medicine and rehabilitations, very few ophthalmologies these days. The GME made them bring that in-house. And then I would say probably many diagnostic radiologies. And then you'll come to some programs like our diagnostic radiology program is a 4-year program. It starts at the PGY 2 level, right? But we'll go ahead and give you an internal medicine preliminary year as part of that. You don't have to interview separately for that with us. And you'll find some programs maybe working deals like that as well. A few stats from the last year's Main Residency Match, 38,000 positions in it that 45,000 people were trying to get, okay? That looks terrible, right? But a lot of that is international graduates, okay? And we'll show you that in just a minute. 18,000 positions that were filled by US MD seniors, but there were 19,755 trying. Now, I will tell you, this is in the Main Residency Match that ended, so on Monday, that means that Monday of match week, 18,465 got a thumbs up letter, right? And then the rest may have filled during the SOAP week that followed, okay? Same for DOs, 7,400 matched as of match week Monday, okay, with 8,033 trying last year. But by the end of that week, those numbers were probably up significantly, okay, in terms of the total number of DOs and MDs that had successfully found a residency program. But that first match, as of Monday, you look at the USMD seniors, 93.5%. Okay, it actually fell a little bit last year. And USDOs, 92.3. That's been climbing every year, and last year was up by like 0.7 or so. And so it's interesting to me that those numbers a few years ago, like DOs were matching at rate about 89%. And that gap is closing, which is to all the MDs in the room is a very interesting process to watch happen, I think. Let's see, 760 positions filled by previous graduates, people who maybe were unhappy with residency they chose or who failed to match last year. 9,045 by international graduates, and there were another 5,000 or so sitting on the sidelines, and 2,500 total positions, 2,575 in the SOAP process, with still 9,177 unmatched candidates. That was as of Monday. And then you'd have probably seen the open positions drop to 100 by the end of match week. And the number of unmatched candidates dropped to like 7,000 at the end of match week. But again, vast majority of MDs filling, the vast majority of DOs filling, a lot of international graduates left kind of to try again. And you'll see that cycle repeat for a lot of international graduates. We talked about these rates and how they're kind of coming together. You can see the exact numbers there from 2023 to 2024. And that, again, is just for the main match that ends, the Monday of match week. It doesn't include the SOAP process. And like I said, at the end of match week, still, on Monday of match week, about 7% of people will know that they did not match and have to try again. Some of the stats here, number of people applying to residency programs, obviously in the kind of purple here, 19,000, almost 20,000 MD grads. DOs are up to 8,000 now. 15 Canadians total applied to U.S. residencies last year. I can't figure that one out, but I guess they're very happy in Canada. Specialties that DOs get into are really kind of the match rates, right? DOs, this was 2024 last year. DOs, 21% chance of matching in neurosurgery. Okay. I didn't run the list for MDs, but it's probably also pretty low for MDs, quite frankly. And 99.5 successful in applying to pediatrics. So just some of the differences for it. And of course, a lot of great specialties in between where DOs are doing great. How many places they needed to rank to match, or if they did not match. Let's look at orthopedic surgery. If DO candidates could rank 6 places, which means they must have gotten at least 6 interviews, right? Okay, so if they could have ranked 6 places, then they were able to match. That's the average number ranked by DO candidates generally. And then if they only got to rank 4, then they probably didn't match, is what it's saying. And so you think about if you cast a net for orthopedic surgery and you get 2 or 3 interviews, you need to be thinking immediately about 2 or 3 interviews is probably not enough to get an orthopedic surgery position. So I'm going to find my backup today, not in March after match week hits, right? So find your backup in October, not in March. And just a few more things. Percentage of people getting their first choice, first rank preference, about 44% for DOs, 48% for MDs. Percentage of people getting their first, second, or third choice gets to be about 74% or so. Okay, so again, you can't set your sights on Brookwood Baptist Health and say, I just can't live if I don't get to go to Brookwood Baptist Health, right? Because your odds are less than 50-50 of getting that one place. Okay, but if you say, wow, Brookwood Baptist Health is awesome, University of Alabama Birmingham is pretty good, and Emory would be all right, even though Brookwood Baptist Health is still number 1, right? But one of those 3, if you could be happy at one of those 3 and your significant other's happy, then you'll be fine, right? It's not a crisis to not get your first pick choice. Watch the videos on how the match process works. You need to know how the rules of the game are set up. And the NRMP will give you a lot of advice as well that we've kind of talked through. And so you do have a lot of rights related to the NRMP. Programs are not allowed to ask you about things they're not allowed to ask you about, race, religion, sexual orientation, all that sort of stuff is kind of hands off for programs to be able to ask you about. Programs are not supposed to be asking you like what other tell me what other programs you applied to. Like they're trying to find out if you're, competing with them or something. I don't know what it is, but and so just, you don't have to engage in those conversations really, and you'll find your way not to. And they'll tell you to, look for all their great resources that are online. And with that, that's enough slides. We're going to move to our panel discussion. And so I'm going to get my panelists to come up. We think it's an interesting opportunity for students to hear from program directors rather than just hearing from your program advisors, from your medical school advisors. And so we've assembled our program directors and program coordinators. Nationally, every program is required to have a physician who's the program director, and then an administrative person who's the program coordinator or program manager, some title like that. So every program we look at will have that exact same structure and maybe more, maybe multiple program coordinators, maybe associate program directors as well. And so for internal medicine, we have Dr. Aaron Townsley, who actually graduated from our program a few years ago, and has been faculty for us ever since, and is now the program director for probably the last 7 years now or so. Anna Ruth Steelman is her program coordinator. Anna Ruth has been in that role for about 2 years now, 2 or 3 years now. For general surgery, we have Dr. Shields Fry, who actually graduated from our program a few short years ago, has been faculty ever since, and became program director about 14 years ago here. And Dr. Fry works with Ansley Powell, who is our program coordinator for general surgery, has been in that role for a year now. For radiology, Dr. Allen is program director and wasn't able to join us, but we have Missy Fadovich, who's been the program coordinator for the last 14 years. And in the transitional year program, Dr. Pacheco is the director, who is not able to join us, but she has Anne Marie Bond working with her as our program coordinator. And Anne Marie's been in that role for 6 or 7 years, something like that now. And so I'm going to ask the first few questions just to let everybody kind of get in the flow of things. And so just the first one I would throw out would be, program directors, coordinators. When you open an application, let's say day one that you get those applications, what are the first things that you're going to scan an application for? What are you interested in?
Well, I think the first thing is, have you done anything that might cast a little shade over you, like a DUI, a minor in possession, something illegal, and that's obviously on there. So we do screen for that. Fortunately, it's such a low percentage, it gets tiresome looking. The second thing, remember, we first opened up as a screening process. So already in our heads, we've got a score in mind for step 2 that is going to impact just that initial screen. Okay, it doesn't mean yes, you'll get an interview, no, you'll get an interview, but we'll have to, if your score is really, really low, we'll have to find some other characteristics there that would make us want to interview. I think in general, and Ansley does most of this for me, is that your application is complete, so that, we don't want to make decisions without a complete application. That's probably, for me, the biggest 3 things.
Yeah, I think that's good. We do a first pass. We have a lot of international graduates, so probably our first look, we had like 3,000 applications. And we do have some international graduates that we know and that can rotate with us, and so we'll filter through those. But mostly what we're doing is filtering through that, and then we look at regions. So usually Southeast, medical schools, DO and MD schools in the Southeast. And really that's because we want to make sure that there's a connection to the Southeast. If we're interviewing somebody from Utah that has 0 connection to Alabama, we're likely wasting each other's time. They're not going to end up here. That's an interview spot for somebody that really wants to be in Birmingham, Alabama. And so we're kind of looking for that like regional part of it and then those connections. So when y'all fill out I think for internal medicine, you can fill out the like supplement material.
All included now, like all part of the same.
or like meaning, so like you can
Supplemental
include, yeah, like supplemental stuff where you can really say, hey, I have a wife that's in Birmingham that wants to be here. Like that, we really pay attention to that because it tells me that you're more likely to stay. And then we look at, step scores, make sure you haven't had any failures anywhere. Although one misstep is not something to throw the application away. I mean, we certainly look at the whole picture, like Dr. Fry was saying. But we look at if there's been any failures, if there's been any remediation in medical school, if there's been any kind of disciplinary action, we kind of look at, make sure that your path has been fairly clean in that way. And then from there, that's our initial screening process. And that's really what Anna Ruth does. And then from there, we kind of go through with more of a fine pick cone and kind of decide if it's a good fit or not. We want to know, grades. We look at GPA a lot, especially now that step 1 is pass fail. And so for us, we look at GPA. Are you above a 3.3, 3.5? That's kind of it. It's not an end all be all. Certainly, if we know you and we know that clinically we've worked with you, you're a good person, like you're going to be a good doctor. If it's a 3.2, that's not something that's going to eliminate you completely. But that's generally the screening process. We want to see that your GPA is decent, and then your kind of meaningful involvement. So not just like I did one day at a fair, but that I had longitudinal, meaningful experiences where I contributed to my community or I was involved with some sort of research, something like that kind of tells us that beyond just going to class and being a med student, that you've had some involvement and kind of making your being involved with your community. I think that's something we look at. So I almost would rather have one really meaningful involvement rather than like 10 health fairs. To me, that means a lot more than just like, hey, I went half a day and check some blood pressures. I really want to know that you've had that committed time. So.
Just a follow-up question. Can I overcome a DUI?
Yeah.
If
Yeah, especially if you were, below the age of 20, maybe. I don't know exactly.
I mean, is it 4 DUIs? Did I assault someone? Maybe not. Is it 1 DUI or minor possession?
If it was last month,
There's a spectrum.
yeah.
Thank you. Do program directors pay attention to when somebody submits their application? Earlier, better? Not really.
I mean, I think when it opens,
It's
you're gonna be
There's not enough time to check back and say, well, let's see how much maybe on the ball this person was. When did they get all this stuff in? That's asking too much considering the number of applications and what we're trying to do. So I think the main thing is it's got to be in by the date Stan gave you, and it's got to be complete, not just partially.
Right.
Very good. Do program directors see the different specialties that I'm applying for?
Depends on their
It
personal
depends.
side. Yeah, it depends on your letters. Yeah, if you have all letters saying you're gonna be a great internal medicine doctor, but you're applying general surgery, we'll know that you're applying. But it doesn't tell us unless it's in what you submit.
All right, very good. Will the program director read my personal statement?
I'd say greater than 90% of the time. Personal statements, as you can imagine, come in all types and interest level. If somebody wants to tell me what general surgery is in their personal statement, I just get disinterested very quickly because I've already been there and done that. So I don't need another person to tell me that. So I tend to read real fast or skip that. But I mean, yeah, every personal statement will be looked at, but maybe not really very carefully read.
I like personal statements that tell me something other than what I'm going to read in your Harris application. So don't regurgitate what you already said tell me something that I'm not gonna get from reading your application, something personal about you. How, what influenced your path to medicine? There's been a formula the last few years that I've seen where it's almost like everybody feels like they have to put a meaningful patient experience in there. I've seen that pattern. I don't know if advisors are telling you all that. Sometimes that feels a little bit forced. I remember Miss O, the 64-year-old lady with metastatic breast cancer. I mean, it's great if it really was meaningful for you, but don't force it if it really didn't have an impact. Really just tell me something that I'm not going to glean from your application.
And be sure you remember some details about this. So
Yeah.
I might just decide to ask you the treatment for breast cancer, and if you don't have a clue,
Right.
then okay.
Yeah. I don't know if our advisors telling you guys that to put in like a meaningful patient experience.
I feel like it's just something you Google and they're like, oh, it's important to include like a patient experience.
Okay.
But
It's every single personal statement that I read, there's like a pattern. It's not, I don't know if it's Chat GPT, like creating something, but it's like, I remember Mrs. O and blah, blah, blah. And so I would say don't fabricate or force something just because we can read through that. We can read between the lines. Really tell me something that I wouldn't glean from your application otherwise. You don't have to tell me all the tragedy that's ever happened in your life. That you don't use it as a format to do that necessarily, but if it does inform your path to medicine, or if it's something that really, tells me why you're going to be a great resident, I think it's important to include.
Dr. Kelsey, you talked about experiences and volunteer activities that they might list, and and already talked about putting in the most meaningful things. So I'm not sure that I'll ask that question.
In surgery, I reviewed the same information that Stan did from the NRMP and the outcomes. And I looked at the statistics, and there was actually no difference in volunteer activities between matched and unmatched. There was no difference in experiences between matched and unmatched. That all changes though when it comes to research. And one other thing I'm blanking on, but so it's fine to put it there. You never know who's going to pick up on what. So it's fine to be there, but don't think it's a magic bullet.
Very good. I want to ask about program signaling. Both of your programs, all of our programs are taking signals this year, is that correct? Okay. And what has been your experience with the signals so far? Have you taken them seriously? Are they meaningful to you? What do you think?
I like it. It's great. We have the geographic signaling and the program signaling. Because I think you guys for medicine, is it 5? They're allowed to signal. There's like a certain number of programs that are allowed to signal. And
It's 5 for
so,
general surgery.
yeah, I think medicine's the same. But it's really helpful for us to know that you signaled us because that means you're interested.
Kind of like dating, you know.
Yeah.
Y'all got your signals, so.
Right. We like
The other thing about it is people often wonder if you come and do an audition rotation or you go outside and do an audition rotation. To me, if you come to our program and do an audition rotation, that's a signal. You can save your signals for programs you didn't get to audition in, because I take it as a strong signal that you came. So you don't have to do it twice. You don't have to come and hit signals too, unless that's just what you want to do, you know. But if you would need to save a few, then I think most people will interpret a visiting rotation as pretty serious.
Very good. In the interview process, what gives you a good impression? What gives you a bad impression?
I get a bad impression when I feel like it's rehearsed. And it feels like a script. So kind of like the personal statement, I want to get to know you. In my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, I care how you are academically and the research and all the other stuff, But the main thing I'm caring about as a program director is this person going to cause me problems? Or are they going to fit in well? Are they going to work hard? Are they going to be open to feedback and be a good fit for our program? And so that's what I'm looking for in the interview. If I feel like it's rehearsed or fake or not genuine, then it's going to give off a bad vibe. So even if your application is stellar, that's really what I'm looking for in the interview. And I feel like most people would say the same. So really resist the urge to have like a scripted, rehearsed answer. I mean, you have an idea of what you want to say so you don't get stuck like tongue-tied, but show who you really are. So that they can get an idea if you're a good fit, and then you can also have an organic conversation with the program to see. Because I mean, you're going to be spending the next few years of your life there. You need to make sure that it's going to be a good fit both ways.
And how do you interact in the breakout rooms?
Yeah.
Don't sit there and not
Look at it.
look at us.
And
or-
not interact.
Yeah, and not interact, because I know for the transitional years, we'll have 2 or 3 residents in there. And they don't want to carry the conversation the whole time. That's for you guys to ask us questions. Why did y'all choose us? What do you like? What do you not like? Don't just kind of sit there and look at a wall, or get up and get your coffee, or, or whatever.
Turn your camera off.
Yeah, because that gets graded also. I mean, not
The
graded.
residents give us feedback too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the coordinators. I would say the interview is a pretty significant part of the process. So don't ignore it. I've had a few applicants seem very disinterested, which is just amazing. So don't let that happen. Second, try to just be normal. Try to project an aura of just normalcy, the ability to carry on a conversation. And then if you're going to mention something specific, know the details behind it. So I have one of my favorite questions is to ask, what's a surgical procedure that you really got interested in or participated in? And they may name a colon resection. But then if you probe a little further, I'm not even sure they were there when that colon resection was done. So you always need to, if you mention something, bring up something, put it in your personal statement, or you list it as an activity. Be prepared for a question about that and know something about it. You don't have to be the expert. That's not what I'm trying to say. You just have to let, I want to believe that you did enjoy it, that you did see some things and you can talk about it. So that's the main thing.
After an interview day, what are you looking for from the candidate after an interview day?
I don't think anything specific. Thank you notes are very, very common. So, maybe it's a Southern thing. I don't know. I agree with Aaron. A lot of our applicants are from the Southeast, from the South. So a lot of those mannerisms are still out there. I don't keep a running list of those kind of things, but it's still very common, just so you know that. Just send thank you notes.
And what kind of stationery do you expect? Serious question, actually. It needs to be handwritten note to you, or?
I don't think
I remember
so.
the
I don't think so.
Totally, okay. Email will be fine.
Just as-
I think it's fine too, but I'm just saying, I remember the handwritten was a little bit better than I do the emails.
Well, and I'll say too, like, if we are your number one choice, tell us that. It's very helpful. Don't lie. Don't say that we're number one if we're not. But if you know that you're going to rank us number one, it is okay to tell us that, and we appreciate that. It really helps us to know that if they're a good candidate, they're going to be a good fit, and we rank them highly, we want to get them. Because we're also, you guys feel like it's a big crapshoot, but it's also hard on our end too. It's also a little bit of a puzzle piece when we're making our rank list, and so it's really helpful to be honest. And then if one of us emails you, because typically we'll email like our top candidates and just say, hey, really enjoyed meeting you. Even if we're not your number one, like just reply. sometimes I'll send sort of post-interview follow-up, like, hey, enjoyed meeting you and hearing about this, and just don't hear anything back. And so I think that would be really nice if you heard from us, either, either Ruth or myself, doesn't have to be a long email, but like, thanks, got your email, appreciate that. Just kind of common courtesy.
I think that advice multiplied times 15 to 18 interviews.
Yeah.
It's gonna for sure increase your odds, and just the normal business courtesies that people might expect,
Yeah.
at this age versus at your age.
And if it takes you 2 weeks to reply, I'm gonna be like, maybe they're not gonna sign their charts right away, or maybe they're not gonna check their email when I tell them they're reading. And so like that kind of stuff really makes a big difference.
And just one of the national rules too is we're not allowed to ask you, how are you gonna rank us? You're gonna rank us, but we can't ask you anything like that. But you can offer that information if you want to offer that information. You should never feel compelled to do that. All right, if I know someone at a program or at a hospital where there is a program, should I contact them to help make a connection?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Use everything you got.
All right, that's the personal advice you give your kid. You might not want everybody to do that, but that's the advice you give your own kids if you were doing this process. So, yeah. And again, there are some rules related to contacts. You're really not supposed to contact programs directly unless that program has contacted you. And so, now that doesn't stop people from doing it, but theoretically, program directors could report a match violation. Let's say you emailed Dr. Townsley on September 25th and said, hey, I applied to your program, just want you to know you're my #1 pick and can't wait to get that interview offer. Match violation, just right? Dr. Townsley may not really report that, but some programs will, and so you need to be careful. If you know somebody who knows Dr. Townsley and that person says, hey, I know a guy, I think he might be a great fit for your program, would you just be looking for his application? Okay. That starts to be a lot grayer zone in any kind of rules and stuff. And so that's technically okay. And it never hurts to have somebody to just read an application. If you ask the program director, are you going to give them an interview? That's probably an inappropriate level of pressure, but if you just pull his application and see what you think, that totally fine. It doesn't hurt to, somebody may be from Virginia and we can't figure out why they want to come to Birmingham at all, but maybe there's some connection. All right, so we got questions from the audience. If you're online and want to chat, you can do that as well. What would you guys like to ask?
So if you're applying to like an advanced program and a categorical program, do you have signals for both, like for like a transitional equivalent program, also specialty or applying, or the signals even with both?
No, I would not think so. No.
It's all
Yeah,
separate.
separate, because you're applying to two different, you have two applications.
And then, when you apply, like if I'm applying to like PM&R or advanced, any of those specialties, do you suggest me having a separate personal statement for the
Yes.
TY year as well? Okay.
But,
Not the TY.
but make sure
But mention it.
your fonts and everything are all the same. Because you wouldn't believe the application, the personal statements we see where it may be a 12-point here and a 10-point here. And you're like, okay, they're not paying very close attention
Yeah.
to what they're doing.
I mean, I would say most TY and prelims have one personal statement. Because we know that you're just here for a year.
Okay.
So one personal statement, I want to do PM&R for this reason. And then sometimes people put a couple of sentences at the bottom just for the TY programs or prelim programs, like I want to do a TY year because of this reason. But don't feel like you have to create two separate ones. Now, if you're doing two separate categorical programs, so if you're doing PM&R, but you're also applying to medicine as a backup, I would have two separate personal statements for those. Yeah.
So when you're applying for like radiology here, you automatically, as Stan said, you automatically get a spot here. But if you're applying to here and then you're also applying to UAB, you still have to go through Anne Marie to get your spot. You can't go through me, although you've applied to me. You still have to go through Anne Marie to get a spot. And that's a question that's asked a lot. And I can't help you get an interview with Anne Marie. It's, I think first come, first served.
Dr. Chelmsley or Dr. Fry, both, your preliminary year interviews, for just the 1-year program versus your categorical interviews for the 3-year, 5-year program. Are y'all is there any difference in how you approach kind of the application review and the timing of the interviews?
Yeah. So, for categorical interviews, we try to make sure that every applicant gets to interview with several faculty. For the prelims, I have been the sole interviewer most of the time. That's still the same amount of detailed preparation on my part goes into reviewing the applications. But the prelim surgery applicants will be just a small percentage of the overall categorical applicants. So it's doable from a one-person standpoint. So you'll just have one interview for prelim surgery in our program.
Yeah, we have a separate day as well, and you might, like our categorical day is really long. You need multiple residents, you have this big PowerPoint. There's a night before dinner, like there's a lot more that goes into it because you're there for 3 years, whereas the prelim medicine is a lot abbreviated. It's a little bit more like a TY interview. It's a lot more abbreviated. So, yeah. I mean, it's important, but we realize it's just a year.
Other questions? So you both mentioned that y'all look through applications to see whether or not a resident will be a good fit for the program. What specifically in the applications makes you feel like they would be a good fit culturally?
So I think the first is the academics, and that's the initial screening. So have you failed anything? Yes or no? Is your GPA decent? Yes or no? And then we're looking at your letters, the clerkship comments, making sure you're not saying anything crazy in your personal statement. Make sure there's not you look through some applications and it'll be like, yeah, I went to med school from like 2008 to 2011, and then I took time off and I came back in 2015. Like you get some of those applications too, where you're like, this doesn't sound like a good fit. But for purposes of you guys, I think we're looking at, yes, academically first, and then we're really getting into the weeds of like your clerkship comments and your letters. Are they just kind of generic stuff, or does it really tell you what kind of resident you're going to be? Do you get along well with others? Are you timely? Do you work hard? Those sorts of things that we look for.
That was great. That's a very hard question to answer. It's said a lot, and it's more of a feel maybe than it is actual verbally expressed. But if it's just looking at the application, that's much harder to do. But once you come through an interview and we're putting it all together, that word fit comes together more nicely.
Also, on a more specific to the program question, what major changes do you all see once Baptist is officially taken over by Orlando?
I don't think we know, but we've been reassured that they have no huge plans initially. So I'm not even sure
We will notice.
that won't, yeah.
Yeah, and I would agree. I probably know that much more than the panel does today, but I would look at when we transitioned from the old Baptist health system to Tenet Healthcare back in 2015. The impact on clinical services was pretty much zero. I think the impact on people in compliance positions and accounting positions and stuff like that was significant. A lot of rules changed and processes changed, but really I see the impact on the typical staff person, typical clinical service, nursing unit, closest to them.
Yeah, medical education didn't change.
Yeah, and we've been through, I mean, how many ownerships? So Princeton, Grandview's done 3 ownership changes.
Yeah.
Princeton's gone through, this will be the 3rd ownership change. And so even since we've been on faculty, that has happened. So when you're actively going through it, everybody kind of stresses out, but you have to look back and be like, no, we've been through this before in medical education. It brings a lot of money to the hospital, both hospitals that have housing residency programs. And so the hospital systems are very motivated to keep medical education happy. So we're doing them a favor, not the other way around. So I think that's always also good for you guys to understand.
Say on your application, you have like either like red flags, like not a good score, or like remediation, or like your GPA isn't as high. What's some ways to like mitigate that, or like show you like a good face, or like make it like you're a better applicant overall? Or is there no way around it and you're just stuck with it?
I like when people address the elephant in the room.
Okay.
So if you have failed something, I like for you to get out ahead of it, not make excuses, but just explain, hey, I learned from it, this happened, and I remediated, I worked hard, I learned from it, and then I was able to pass, or I was able to remediate that class. And that shows us that you have an ability to learn from your mistakes and improve over time. So so try not to gloss over it. I would get out ahead of it and just either in your interview or in your personal statement or something, tell us what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I agree, but I don't, that's the best thing to do.
Yeah.
Don't try to hide it.
Yeah. And then if you have, I mean, it helps you guys are here, so that's really nice. And we definitely make phone calls. Hey, did you work with this person? How were they to work with? And a lot of times that means more than a grade or whatever, academically something that happened. It means a lot more to us, like what you did on your rotations, or if you get along well with others, did you work hard, did you respond to feedback, all of that kind of stuff is probably more important. And we have the benefit of seeing you on these campuses.
So I'm fine with PM&R, and so if I want to do like a TY or prelim here, would it be beneficial to, like, because I have like 3 or 4 letters that are PM&R, but would it be beneficial to get letters from attendings that I've worked with here that y'all know to
Yes.
apply to prelim and TY or?
Absolutely.
That would just be like that would just be like an extra, might go in his application to a TY program with us, but not, maybe not to his.
I mean, if it's a good letter, you can't have too many letters, honestly.
That was my next question, like, how many letters can we submit to y'all, or if it's prelim or TY?
We asked for 3.
So
like 3 or 4.
There's
I'm
no
not
max.
sure, that's a great question. I don't know how many can be uploaded. I don't know how many they'll take.
I don't know what Eris has. They may have a max. We
Yeah.
don't necessarily have a max,
Yeah.
but Eris may have a
That,
max.
yeah, that's what I was trying to say. I don't. In general, for surgery, people, one of them's usually kind of a medical school letter,
Like
and then
letter.
3 individual people.
But I would say, yes, you want a letter from the specialty that you're applying to, but you also want a letter from someone who really has worked with you, who gives specific examples of how you were as a medical student. That's going to be more meaningful than a crap letter from a big name that barely knows you. So, I don't know. I mean, I know like for you, you probably want at least 1 letter from surgery.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And I'm, we're the same way, but
It's okay to have a letter from outside your specialty, but just think I would think it's 1. That's my opinion, but I just think it's 1. And then the other 2 probably should be in your specialty.
I mean, for us, like sometimes we'll see people apply and they have just an amazing performance on their pediatric rotation. And we'll get this like long love letter from their pediatric attending and what a great person you are. And even though it's not a medicine letter, I'm like, wow, this is a really, they did this and they, like really, really good detail of what kind of student you were on that rotation. To me, that's a lot more meaningful.
Other questions? Are there any, I guess, whenever you're looking at an applicant, you mentioned this, talk about a fit, are there things that you see in an application that aren't necessarily wrong, bad, or that you just really don't like, or like pet peeves, like you see, like this person has this, or they didn't do this, and I don't know if it's gonna be a good fit. That makes sense.
Yeah. There's so many people that go to see your application and make decisions, it's hard to please everybody. So just put who you are and let the chips fall where they are. What's important to you, put it down there. What experiences, research,
I get a little annoyed when people put stuff they did in high school or like they planned a fraternity party or something, like something that it was like remote. So try to focus on things that you've done recently. Unless it's something that you started in high school and you're still meaningfully kind of involved with, I think that's helpful, but try to resist the urge. Like for me, quality is better than quantity. So try to resist the urge of like every little thing you've ever done since 1985. Put some stuff that's more recent and more pertinent to medical school. But that's probably just a personal.
Well,
like
no,
SGA president, senior year of like
I'll go
whatever.
back to the data. The source of the data that Stan mentioned is going to send you the link to. You can look at all this, but really there's a difference with research experience, but there's really no difference between volunteer activities for matched and unmatched. So like trying to say, I think it's listing all these things that you volunteered for whatever it is, blood pressure checks or whatever. Probably not going to get you not going to get you much.
The pet peeves I see you guys having would be like incomplete applications where, you report your USMLE score and it's a 210, but you don't put your actual transcript in there for the first few weeks. Maybe on purpose because you failed the first time. And program directors, they know that these days, but incomplete applications, missing recommendations, so we really can't get the full view of you on day one. Get after as nicely as you can, get after those faculty, you get them out on time and stuff. It's hard to say, well, this looks pretty good, but I'm gonna have to come back tomorrow or 2 days from now to take another look at this and make sure.
So if on the ERAS, you submit on the 25th, and you have a publication that's pending, you put it as pending, and during the year it gets published, would that be something you guys like to know and I send you a journal or whatever?
And you can say submitted for publication. Yeah, that tells us you're actively working on stuff. Or if you're doing a quality improvement project, even if it's not completed yet, you can put that in there.
What else?
You said something about how do we kind of know if you're gonna be a fit? What kind of hobbies do you have? Are you a loner that just sits there and plays video games all the time? Or do you get out and you run, or you play basketball with whatever group? That kind of stuff shows a lot too.
And if you've got our residents, we hire all of the above.
So do you want us to be like descriptive, say like, well, I love to cook or bake
That's
bread
fine.
or, when
As long as you bring some of it to
We're
us.
mothers and we wanna make sure that when you get here, they're not. And we're gonna.
We're the mamas.
And we wanna make sure that you're gonna fit and, fit in with the residents and have something in common with them, because then I'm gonna worry that you're sitting at home in your apartment by yourself and not fitting in. We wanna make sure that everybody fits in, I guess, with you.
In particular, I like to hear about your leadership roles. So if you were a leader in some, whatever it is, don't worry about what it was. Just say I was at a leadership role, whatever it was.
So I have one question. So you had mentioned there are certain things you read in the personal statement, you're like, yeah, I know what this is, I just want to read that. Are there certain things that you like to see specifically? Like, you like when certain applicants like touch on this, or maybe talk about that, like any certain kind of characteristics that make a better personal statement versus kind of like a generic one?
What usually comes out is some kind of passion for the field that you're interested in. And what does your personal statement sort of in concordance with all these activities you say you have, you know, and so that it all sort of meshes together. And so, you know, it's not just your personal statement, although I know you're really wanting to figure out how to get our attention, get program directors' attention. But I think when it meshes, it makes sense.
We can just tell we've read enough of them. We know when it's genuine and when it's not genuine. So try to really have someone edit it for you grammatically, but for content, try not to let anyone else write it or ChatGPT or AI, whatever. Like really try to write it from your heart, because that is going to be very obvious to us that it's genuine, regardless of what you say. And it's kind of, I remember writing like personal statement for like residency. It was a great time for me to like feel gratitude and be really reflective. Because how often do we really do that in our day to day? We're going on about our day to day, we're busy. How often do we just really have time to like be reflective of like, why did I decide to do this? Like, why am I pursuing this specialty? Why do I feel passionate about it? And kind of let that come through. So, yeah.
And if you're applying for the TUI year, what do you want your next specialty to be? Because I can't tell you the number of applications I get, and you read personal statement or something, and you go through and dig, oh, well, this person wants to go into dermatology or radiation oncology. So, you know, kind of mention, I want to go into radiation oncology because, you know, or my passion is, or however you want to say it.
And y'all are able to write multiple personal statements in one. Like you can have a different one for, say, the Berry Baptist Health System, then you might send to Harvard. So, yeah, you might think through your audiences there too. You know, should this one be super academically focused, or should this one be, you know, focused on the love of medicine or whatnot? All right, so we need to be respectful of their time, so we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. We did do a recording of this, so we may take a crack at editing it and see if it's worth sharing